What's going on, guys? This is the Buried in the Bones podcast. This is 006, and today I'm going to tell you guys how I use the blueprint that I'm about to give you and how it has manifested in my own life thus far. So, let me tell you a story. When I was in college, I was in a situation. I was dating a girl at the time, and I knew I had a lot of information about strength training and the performance world. I had some really good internships and experience in college. And then I also had this idea that what I needed and what I wanted was to be known for something or to be looked at a certain way, to have this idea surrounding me and of like this badass, right? This guy that everyone looks at and is like, oh yeah, there's Bo Crisp, right? There's this guy, he's really cool. And now of course I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not right. But at the time it was a big driver, and in some cases, in this case, it worked for me. But here's the truth. When I go back to those three questions I said last week, there's a couple addition to those. But the three questions were, if you remember, number one was you have to identify where you are. And, at that time, I was not very happy with my situation. I was not necessarily happy with the people who were involved in my life. And I had a choice. And so, where was I? Man, I was sleeping on what was my best man's couch at the time, my best friend. And I essentially didn't really know what I was doing, where I was going, and then went to Phoenix, Arizona. I had 13 job interviews. I had 9 workouts in 3 days. Came back home, made a tough decision to go to Gilbert, Arizona, and become a strength and conditioning coach. On the back end of that, I was a full-time student at the University of Tennessee. And my senior year, I had 19 credit hours of study. And one weekend, I would be in South Carolina to follow this girl, right? I'd be in South Carolina doing firefighting testing. And then the next weekend, I would be in Atlanta doing firefighting testing. And then inevitably, I sat down with myself one day and I was like, not doing it, man. There's got to be more for me. And I made that choice. It was a hard one. But where was I? I was very unhappy at the time. I was not on the path that I thought I would be on. I was a bit sad and just dealing with stress, of course, as a young 20-year-old at the time. But yeah, where was I? And then I moved to Phoenix with $2,000. I My rent was $1,400 a month. I started coaching at the D1 Gilbert, and long story short, I got COVID. My rent was $1,400. I had 2 weeks no pay, and of course did not afford my rent at the time. And so where was I? Man, I was out west in the desert where all things die, and in this case, my financial situation. So I was not in a good place, honestly. I've never been broke before. I've been broke, actually. As a matter of fact, let me put an asterisk besides that. I did not necessarily come from money, and I was definitely a broke college kid. But in this situation, I was actually like, my life can change because I'm going to be evicted in this state. I do not have a good car. I have no money. I don't know anybody here. I can't just ask for money for people, and I have no job. So, man, that was really hard. That was a really hard time in my life. It was the lowliest I've ever been. In addition, I was in like a 350 to 400 square feet apartment, and roaches were falling on me. I was sleeping on a air mattress. I had one chair that I found in like the garbage, essentially. Someone to set it out. We had one chair. I had my kettlebell and my strength and conditioning essentials, NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association textbook. And that was what I had. So, looking back, I had everything I needed. But at the time, what had to happen was I had a moment where I could give up. And I wanted to, man. I was very unhappy. I'd text my mother and call myself a loser, and I would feel sorry for myself. And then I had to ask myself the hard questions. Identify where you're at. Can you ask yourself the hard questions? Are you willing to deal with the consequences that come from sacrifice? Right? Absolutely. The reality of the situation is I made a decision to go out west. It was my decision. And I can either figure it out or I can go back home and kind of lose. In that case, I would have lost. It wasn't necessarily a failure, but I did not do what I was hopeful of, and I would go back to being or doing exactly what I was going to do prior to that. So that would essentially mean, if we talked about it last week, lateral move right back to zero, right? I did not make any progress. Movement is not progress. I would have learned some things, but in reality, I know that I would have been in the exact same situation as before, and that's just not going to happen. So I made those decisions. And it's kind of cool when you think of those three decisions. Can you identify where you're at? Are you willing to have hard conversations? The hard conversation was, you put yourself in a situation. You cannot get people involved and then be a person that is negatively impacting people and sucking them into what is your fault. And so can you make a decision to study your ass off? Can you find a roommate? Are you willing to sit in this darkness, which was this cloud of life at the time in this city, and can you sleep on the air mattress with roaches falling on you? Will you study? Can you do that? And what are you going to sacrifice? Well, I'm going to sacrifice the comfort of knowing that I can go back home to mommy, right? I'm going to sacrifice the comfort of knowing I can go back and probably hang out with who I was hanging out with and doing the things I did. That's easy. But there's no, and would have been zero growth there. None whatsoever. I'm from a small town, Clinton, Tennessee. If you guys know where that's at, then you know about it. And if you don't, it's pretty small, man. And it's just not who I want to be. It's not who I want it to be. And so every time, it's kind of like when you think of those three questions. When you ask yourself those hard questions and you make a response positively in an effort to be something for yourself and try, you unlock or get a little closer to capability and potential. When I look back, every time I made a choice to just endure it for a moment longer, I never realized that I was getting closer and closer to my life today. It's really fascinating. The truth is, you hear it a lot, but then you look back and you're like, man, it really is true. Those small micro decisions do compound just as everything else does in your life. The small snacks compound in your life for your fitness goals. The negativity that you compiled reading on the internet, that, manifests in your life. And there's something to that. And for me, there was. And so the life for me was I had to essentially submit my ego, which was this arrogant, lost young man. And I had to suffocate my ego long enough to be okay with enduring the unknown for a minute. Am I going to be homeless in Phoenix, Arizona? Where the hell am I? Who's going to hire me? Well, it turns out that I endured it. I went back to work and I met Donovan McNabb. And I was coaching his daughter's softball team. And I was introduced to a sports medicine doctor who decided to hire me onto his team. And so I went from having absolutely nothing and probably a lot of talent with coaching, but haven't been able to express capability because of my selfishness and we'll say pity, self-pity. When I decided to make action and a little forward progression, not just like doing the day to day and feeling sorry for myself, that's movement, right? But legitimate progress forward, I went from sleeping on that air mattress and having cockroaches in my Nespresso maker. It was actually a Keurig, a really old one. I opened it one time. This is really gross segue, but that Keurig, I remember the first time ever I knew I had roaches. I opened it and I saw like 100 of them fly out of my Keurig machine. I was like, we have arrived, my friends. No more coffee for me. And if you know me, at that time, that was probably the hardest thing, was the fact that my cafe was no mas. So yeah, what was I willing to sacrifice? Well, I sacrificed the fact that I did not. I had to sacrifice the people back in my life. I had to sacrifice a relationship at the time. I had to sacrifice the comfort that was back home, and I didn't really have anybody, it felt like, to go back home to. So I kind of made myself feel like there was no possible situation other than fail and be on the streets or make something of myself. And that's just who I wanted to be. So what did I do? Well, my first tool was movement and that kettlebell. I just started working out. I had to keep at least one thing right. My other wealth, which was I needed to take care of myself. And it's kind of like what I talked about last week, but if internally derived attributes are expressed outwardly, then I wanted my endurance and my will to be greater than what is at hand. And so what I did, guys, is I came up with some steps or a blueprint, if you will, for situational progress that I've experienced in my life. And there's more to the story, and I'm going to share it, but I'm trying not to give too much away because I'd rather write it down and you guys read it and do something about it and hopefully learn from it. And if that is my purpose in the world, then I would love to serve that purpose, is to have experiences, express that outwardly, and hopefully someone can learn something from it. And hopefully I continue to do so. So the first step, of course, is identify where you are. What is the situation you're in? What prison have you set for yourself? Is it a bad one? Some people aren't as, some people are not in a terrible situation as others are. But what are the things you're wanting to progress on, and what's holding you there? What is sitting over you? Can you ask yourself the hard questions? What is a hard question exactly? What is it that's holding me there? Why am I drinking so much? Okay, who am I socializing with? What are these people presenting in my life? Are they giving me anything? Why do I feel so tired? Why did I just talk to this person for 3 hours about them talking about themselves? So you can kind of see how you can start categorically breaking things down. Okay, so it turns out, for me, the people, right? The hard question was, who was it that I was surrounding myself? Who do I want to be? What do I have to sacrifice in order to get there? That's a really hard thing because, yeah, what you have to do in the third is, are you willing to go to battle? Are you willing to go to battle and potentially deal with these sacrifices or the consequences that come from those sacrifices? Last week I said complacency is evil, and most evil things, they show up as your friend. The fourth addition to these questions is, are you willing to leave your evil friends or evil friend complacency and potentially more? Complacency is essentially the accumulation of all input that you've had that has rooted into your complacency. It's the lack of movement. It's what we're reading on, the TV screens or Facebook or Twitter, Instagram. It's the people in my life. It's the alcohol I consume. Maybe I'm on YouTube and watching too much stand-up comedy. Maybe I'm having 5 snacks or so throughout the day. I'm not having set meals. Are you willing to get rid of your evil friend and potentially more? Are you willing to sacrifice the things, the people in your life, and the lowly, lowly friend that keeps you most comfortable, right? It's the one thing that keeps you closest to yourself, and it's that justification for everything. I'm tired today. I don't, for example, I did not want to walk upstairs and get my phone charger. Because I was like, maybe I can get through it. I have 10% battery left. It's as simple as that. I almost convinced myself that the 20-second walk upstairs was not worth my time. It certainly was. It's why I got all these quotes today. So it's little things like that, and they come up all the time. But the fifth and final, so we have 1, identify where you are. 2, can you ask yourself the hard questions? 3, are you willing to go to battle with the consequences from those sacrifices? And are you capable of leaving that evil friend and possibly more? The fifth one is, as we know, we talked about the door. That's potential. Let's say you step through it. You have to shut it. You have to shut the door. How often have we seen this? People are like gung-ho about going on this like diet or this exercise routine. But what has happened is there are built-in safeties they have compiled or presented before that. It's the person who wants to go on a diet or something, and they're like, I feel this way when I do this. They're like, sometimes I like on Saturday and Sunday, I like to go out and do this thing. It's like most oftentimes people who diet and do kind of go into the cheat meal route, it does seem the cheat meals are like equivalent to like 50 meals and they end up at 0 again, right? Or, unfortunately, it's kind of like addicts. It's the, I'm going to get help. And we all are, we are all addicts in something. For me, it's like or Instagram. I'm going to stop today. I'm going to stop being on Instagram for 2 or 3 hours. I'm going to do this instead. I delete Instagram for 25 minutes and I'm right back to it. Or an addict, for example, is like, I'm going to get help. Am I okay? Like, I come to you and I'm like, do you still love me? Do you still care about me? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. Does it again. This time I'm going to get help. This time I'm going to get help. Calls the same person who justified their actions with love. And it's not that person's fault. It's just something that happens. But you're enabling, and that person in your life is complacency. Right? Or maybe you have that person you call, you make a relational move, you do the same thing relationally, you talk or you snap at somebody, right? Then you call your best friend, you're like, well, he did this, and he's, maybe I'll do it this time. I will stop being so mean in this regard and try it again. And then all of a sudden you snap at the same person, or you snap the same way, or you respond the same way to certain things so many times, but then you apologize for it the same way, but it never gets better. Every time you kind of get that like positive reinforcement or that feedback, it does seem like you're just enabling, you're not actually fixing anything. And that's because a lot of us are not willing to shut the door on what is that evil friend, and we're not willing to truly step into what is this new thing we desire, right? You have to envision yourself through it and all that you can be. You look back and you're like, I must go on. Goodbye. Maybe it's like a classic movie. People, like a breakup. You break up with somebody, you walk out the door, and you're shutting the door and they say something, and you're like, ooh, maybe I'm not confident my answer, opens the door back, right? You go back to that parasitic person. You go back to the selfishness because they said, I love you. And you're like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm back, baby. But in reality, it's like, oh, this is the 15th time this has happened. It must change. It has to change. And that relationship in this case is yourself and some of those things that are holding you back, like alcohol or snacking or just sitting on your ass, right? So what I've done is those are like kind of just some rule steps. I've given us some practical ideas about what a good day looks like. So practical steps in getting your health and wellness in check. Well, one, in my opinion, sleep's very important, yes, but I think we all need to set a time and just choose to get up at it. I struggle with this. This is one of the hardest things for me. It's kind of like, I'm going to kind of discuss this quote in a minute, so I'm not going to touch on it too much, but a guy named Viktor Frankl, I'll explain who he is in a minute, but he basically said, between stimulus and response, there is, kind of this time between the two where you get to make a decision. And a lot of the times when we're making habits, we have that space between stimulus and response, And so the stimulus is my alarm clock, and there's a momentary time where I get to decide if I wake up or not, and that response is usually what's going to get me to where I want to be, or I just continue to hit the snooze. And it's not that it's the end all be all, it's just that it's this one example of how these small decisions, of how you get this stimulus, alarm clock, you have the moment to choose, and then you kind of just reinforce that your physical body and kind of that complacent, I want some more sleep, although I know it's only for 20 more seconds, that you kind of hit the alarm clock and go back to bed. That compounds. It's kind of like a habit, right? It's not necessarily the alarm clock in general that you struggle with. That habit does translate elsewhere. It's the same if I'm doing reps for fitness. I have my 10 repetitions. It's at a weight that's pretty uncomfortable. I get to 7 or 8, and maybe do 9. No one's looking. I rack it. Or some people do this too. We're doing reps or something. It's pretty obvious. Everything on, it's 8 reps, for instance, and this is like set 5. So one's on set 5. I do it too. It's like, how many? Maybe they'll say 6 this time. I'll have to do 6. It's just funny how we have those built-in safeties. But between stimulus and response, you have this moment to choose a decision that's probably going to make you a better person and give you some better habits, or you can just kind of stay in that complacent role that we continue to do so. So waking up on time. The second one is eat 3 meals a day and just kind of stick to them. We can start changing things out later, but just a lot of people, and this is just fitness in general, health and wellness. Oh, but what about this? What about the caffeine thing? What about this I think it's hydronized water or something like that, or what about the red light therapy or the cold therapy or this weird laser that points at my kneecap and heals all tissue? It's like, chill. All of that is like 0.00001% of what makes up the other 99%, which is like how you go about your day-to-day and like the first initial potent stimuli being your habits, your nutrition, your strength training, and your daily activity. So eat 3 meals a day. You can have 1 snack. I'll get to it in just a second. I would say for most 2 to 3 days of mandatory lifting. If you're fairly athletic and a little bit younger, I would say maybe 20s to mid-30s, you can probably get away with 2 days of strength training if you have activities like mountain biking, backpacking, this active activities, rock climbing, etc. As we get older, it's going to have to change. That's just anatomically true. 3 days of strength training is like the go-to. If you want to make hypertrophy or maybe like aesthetic goals and you want these muscles to grow, you're probably going to need more of that. But that is a good rule of thumb. So 2 to 4 days, I should say, of strength training. That's just to keep a robust body, healthy joints, because even if you're running, you're not working through multiple range of motion, planes of motion, meaning like laterally, rotational, things like that. And my favorite, 7 to 10,000 steps a day. It's not a magic number, but if you're not getting that number, the odds are you're pretty sedentary throughout your day. And, it's hard if it's raining outside or it's super hot outside. Well, guess what? My beautiful wife gave me a walking pad, and it's $50. And that took all of my rationale and justifications for not going outside out the window. Walking pads are $50, maybe more, but they're cheap, and you can put it inside, put it in front of the TV, and at least you're walking on screen time. That's probably better than the alternative, right? And then lastly, go outside. Everyone needs to go outside. For me, it's a good way to, the house kind of feels like it's, right? It's in my noggin, kind of compressing my thoughts and ideas. Sometimes it feels a little restrictive. Sometimes when I just go outside and go, I'm okay. Go back inside, do what I have to do. So going outside. Now, if you guys have pen and paper on you, I promise you're going to want to write this down. I've given 3 meals. I kind of wrote them down here. It's generic. So let me say this. I am not a dietitian nor a nutritionist. I do know nutrition. I went to school for dietetics originally. However, I cannot legally tell you what exactly to eat. So what this is a blueprint of theoretically how I eat. And what you can do is, when I say certain foods here, you can just generalize them and be like, what would I substitute? So if I list options, right? I give you options of things that could play in, and then you get to decide from there. So now that I have covered my ass, here you go. Meal 1, 3 to 6 whole egg whites. I have an egg, a whole egg, and then about 3 to 5 ounces of chicken or like turkey sausage, probably some fruit, and then I have 2 servings of veggies. For me, usually it's a spinach in my eggs. There's 1 meal. Meal 2, I have 4 to 8 ounces of grilled chicken breast, an ounce of cheese. Please make sure to count it. It really does add up, and notice what you're cooking with, right? If I'm cooking with olive oil or anything, you know, the difference in a teaspoon and 2 teaspoons is quite a bit of calories. But meal 2, 4 to 8 ounces of grilled chicken breast, an ounce of cheese, and then a sweet potato, 1 or half of 1, depending on how big you are, right? Your frame, if you're over 6 foot, a sweet potato works. If you're under 6 foot, maybe half, I don't know. But, and then 2 servings of veggies. Meal 3, 4 to 10 ounces of grilled salmon, maybe chicken, steak, bison, beef. And if you guys notice, I have a range of different protein sources, right? I create variety. And that's for what we call like micronutrient inputs. So we're just trying to change it up, make sure we have a big, variety and, a plate that kind of touches all the bases, if you will. So 4 to 10 ounces of grilled salmon, chicken, steak, beef, or bison, or something like that. I love bison. A sweet potato, and of course, 2 servings of veggies. Choose your veggies, I don't care. If you guys are like vegan, vegetarian, like tofu, things like that are always good. Whatever protein source that you know, and I just listed what I would use. So fish is always a good protein source for some of you guys if you don't like any of those. But those are your 3 meals. If you have to, go back, write them down. It gives you at least a blueprint. Then you get 1 snack. It's gonna be a protein bar with at least 20 grams of protein, hopefully less than 40 grams of carbs, or a protein shake with 1 to 2 scoops of a protein powder. And if you're going to use peanut butter, my God, peanut butter is like the sneakiest calorically dense thing ever. If you're going to use peanut butter, the tablespoon, you get it like this. If you can see me on camera, you get it like this and then scrape it off. Do not let that mound of peanut butter go over that tablespoon. It's going to add up quickly, especially if you're doing that daily, right? So that's the nutrition side. For your fitness and strength and conditioning, write this down. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, strength training. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you're only doing 2 days, especially if you're younger, Monday, Friday. Wednesday, hopefully something that's like rock climbing or mountain biking, something a little bit more stimulating. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, a bit more stimulus, if you will, a bit more stress physically. Tuesday, Thursdays, 10,000 steps or more, mandatory. Go on a long walk, go outside, go hiking if you want to. And then some mobility. And that mobility, I would recommend doing like a flow yoga. Look up flow yoga on YouTube. Click one that's 10 to 15 minutes. There you go. That's 10 to 15 minutes, guys. The average screen time in America is 7 hours and 9 minutes. You can spend 7 hours on the screen and still get 10 minutes of yoga in. That's crazy. Just do it. You're not losing anything at all. Mandatory. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, strength training. Do what you got to do for the rest of the day. Make sure you get your 7 to 10,000 steps in. That can be involved in the workout, right? Tuesday, Thursday, long walk, 10,000 steps, mandatory, and some like yoga or mobility. Saturdays and Sunday, I'm going to call those outside days. Go walk with your friends, go meet some people up. 60 to 90 minutes outside, 7 to 10,000 steps daily, mandatory. Maybe hit a yoga on that Sunday, like a little, breezy little yoga sesh. Feels good. So please write those down, guys. I'll give you a moment to pause and go back. And now we get to the fun stuff. So I've given you are the tool. I have now given you some useful ideas on how you can express it, how you can utilize your tool, your body. And the truth is, discipline is the ability to execute despite how you feel. You're not going to do that most days. It's a pretty rigid schedule. But the problem is, most of us probably do not have enough autonomy right now to be creative with their schedule to justify moving things around. One, you don't know the strength training aspect of it or adaptation or physiological demands. So we don't know the principles behind physiology or why strength coaches prescribe them. That's my job. Two, you just aren't consistent enough yet and you haven't earned the right to manage it. So stick to the program for at least 6 months. At least. They say that in strength training, your first 3 months, really I think your first year in my opinion, are neurological. And what that means is your brain's learning how to move muscles independently of one another or co-contract, which is where they're working together, or putting yourselves in positions essentially. And so if discipline's the ability to execute despite how you feel, this is kind of interesting. But I have a question. Why is it that we are so consistent with brushing our teeth? We're so good at it. We do it all the time. But for some reason, we have this physical thing, our teeth, right? And we brush it consistently. But we don't take care of the other 99% that composes of what I physically express and outwardly show, right? My teeth are 0.5% of my body, right? It's right here. Why is the rest of the body not as taken care of? Or why is it that we don't realize that that's just a piece of the entire puzzle? I've always wondered that. It's okay, we can brush our teeth. Can we walk for 10,000 steps? Am I taking care of my physical body? It's never made much sense to me, but when I say it, it's oh yeah, why is it that we spend 2 minutes a day brushing our teeth, 4 minutes a day, and some people spend 0 minutes a day taking care of the other 99% of what is outwardly expressed. And part of that is complacency too. It's been marketing, right? It's kind of been the underlying teachings of our life, and most marketing now is on the screens, and so we're sitting there. And there's not a big push because people make money when people are sick. That is, I don't want to get into it, but people make a lot of money for you being sick. Yeah. I'm going to leave it at that. We can get into that another time when I'm prepared to go in on it, but today is not the day. So, the truth is, I wrote this the other day. I said complacency is evil, and like most evil things, it shows up as your friend. And I kind of referenced how, you walk through the door, you envision yourself, you see your potential, you've done all these questions. Where are you? Can you have hard conversations? Are you willing to deal with the consequences and battle that? Are you willing to leave your friend and possibly more, So when you go through that door and that, that relational partner, you're shutting it and all of a sudden they call you back. You're like, oh, that's exactly what I needed. That fills me up, man, momentarily. Complacency has involved you in a romantic, slow burn relationship. A toxic one. But in this case, in the end, this one will kill you. Complacency has involved you in a romantic, slow burn relationship. Except in the end, this one will kill you. First, complacency makes you weak, chronically diseased, sick. And when my physical agent, my body is sick, that slowly trickles down and burns its way into my mind. I don't have my hormones running correctly. One of the biggest endocrine excretors being my muscles and the muscular system and my skin and all things that outwardly express my health reaches into my noggin, and that becomes unhealthy. And when I have two systems go, it's hard to have another really healthy system, and it eventually gets into my spirit. And we've probably seen that before when people just let go or they just kind of give up. When people just give up. And it's sad because I feel like it's happening more with people my age and people younger than me. But it's no wonder everyone's angry and bitter. The first tool that we have at our disposal to explore the outside world is like our physical touch. It's like we were born and then we started touching things, and then how we touch them is, our experience with the world. And then I age, my touch gets better, and I explore, I move around the world better, and then I create what we have ideas, and then I can kind of internalize them, and then I start creating essentially my own opinions on things. And then I have this thing already within me, my spirit and my soul, and then I get that kind of feels me. And then how that feels me is the way I get to positively express this, and then I internalize it. I'm like, I love this person. My mind feels good, and I think about it, and then I express it. Or it's how I take care of people. It's how I, express my internally derived attributes. And a lot of people aren't expressing, or at least exploring, the world around them physically, and so the sensation's off. The inputs aren't right. There's not a lot of going on. There's not new inputs and new information for me to kind of go over in my brain and create this internal dialogue that gets to explore more. There's not a lot of exploration. Yeah. And if there's not a lot of exploration, if you're not moving, you are dying. Move or expire, and movement gets you to zero. So if you're not moving and you're not even at zero, you're deteriorating, and first it's going to start with your physical body. And then unfortunately what that happens is it just seems physiologically true, right? If you have an unhealthy body, your brain is probably not healthy. And if your brain is not healthy, then there's no way you're thinking 100%. I just read this thing the other day. I wish I knew the guy's name. So you just have to go find him. But he was like, hey, it's not the fact that we just have this random generation of kids with anxiety. They're just metabolically sick, right? Their physiology cannot keep up with all the inputs, or lack thereof, physically. And instead it's just like swiping, like doom scrolling is what we call that. Doom scrolling on laptops and computers and things, and they never get a break. It's always input, 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 but there's no physical exploration. There's no, uniqueness in that. Everyone's getting the same experience, and that's tough to do when we all have individual souls. Yeah. So, I gave you guys a blueprint. But I've always wondered, I kind of look back at the prison scenario last week. The coolest thing about today is you get to create your story. And I've always been really impressed by people. Viktor Frankl is about to be one to bring up. And then maybe biblically also there is I believe the Apostle Paul, right? And I believe he was writing to the Philippians. And he's in jail, and some of his best writings, or at least the most beautiful and maybe the most personable to me, he was written while in prison. And I've always wondered, how is it that these folks, these men and women, are able to write some of the most beautifully written words in the most disgusting of circumstances, in circumstances that do not touch, that we cannot touch. It doesn't, we cannot scratch the surface of what that's like. And so let me get to Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist back during World War II, or actually right before, I believe. And he and his wife became concentration camp. They both went to concentration camps, and I think they both went to Auschwitz. And he wrote a book called A Man's Search for Meaning. And in reality, if you've not read that book, it is a human being's search for meaning. It is the best book I have ever read in my life. I wish and hope that I read it 10 times more. And I just don't think there's a scenario in life that that book doesn't touch on. And let me start with one that you will be familiar with because I just mentioned it. Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedoms. Keep in mind, he went there with his wife. This man also was the same one that he said this thing, it was so beautiful. And he was just talking about the will to live. And situationally, at this time, he loved his wife. And he, at that time, was like, the idea of her potentially being there in the end is enough for him to get through. Which is amazing. That's one of the most beautifully... Man, I want that willpower. I want all that he has in that phrase and in that thought process and how I carry on my life, because that is onwards. That's what onwards is to me. That's no matter what situation, no matter what is before me, I want the soul that says onwards. He also says this: everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. To choose one's own way. So, what is the circumstance you're in? Are you happy with where you're at? Can you tell yourself where it is you are exactly? You have the power. And between stimulus and response, you have the space to start choosing. And with the blueprint, hopefully, that I just provided you guys, you have a new weapon at your disposal, if you will, to attack this prison, and start chipping away at the things that are just bringing you down and escape your own hell, escape your prison. Fitness, to me, is voluntary hardship with purpose in mind. And it's not because we don't all necessarily need to be monsters. I want to physically express myself as much as possible. It's just something that I enjoy. I'm very proud of it. But not everybody needs to be the monsters, right? These beasts. Not everyone needs to do it in order to manifest this body that is presumed beautiful either. I think naturally your body, all those things will take care of itself. One of my best friends and my former boss, Richard Mulder, he was an amazing strength coach, owner of Liberty Performance Training in Phoenix, Arizona, author of 3 or 4 books now, and he's been a published NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association. His research has been published there. Army Ranger, Captain, amazing guy, and maybe I got that rank wrong, sorry Rich. But one of his rules for the gym, especially for internships that he let me work with, it was health precedes performance. And I think performance is, the human body, how I can go about the world and do my shit. That is performance. And he said, don't worry, the former will take care of the latter. So just worry about health. And what is health? Is that quality of life. It's how you enjoy your day-to-day. Can you do things appropriately and choose the right response between the stimulus and the response with the time, can you choose the right one? And just don't worry. Get your systems down. Take the blueprint and the rubric I gave you. Get the systems down. Everything else will take care of itself. Autonomy will come. It takes time. I'm still learning. But the truth is, we don't have to be monstrous beasts, or we don't have to worry about the aesthetics. I think what we have to do with voluntary hardship is, and these things, every time we make this decision, we're choosing that we're still living. I'm not just going about my day to day. I actually made a conscious choice to do the opposite thing of what I naturally wanted to do today. I woke up on the time that I set for myself today, and I didn't allow myself to give in again. This time, I get my cupcake. This time, I'm done. I'm not going to do it today. Hey, Bo, would you like this cocktail that I'm making? No, I'm good, man. I've already had 2. That's a joke. Maybe not. But, yeah, man. Every time you make that choice, you solidify that you're still living. Once you give up on that and you just kind of let yourself coast, you just move, right? There's not much life there. Your spirit has been muted. It's been suffocated, and it's been put on the wayside. We always have a choice. And every time we make that choice, we basically decide that our spirit has overridden the years and years of habitual action that we've compounded over the years. Aristotle put it like this: the aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. That's awesome. And that's something that you can think about yourself too. The aim of your art, your physical nature, and the painting and the portrait of your life that you've created, you have the canvas and you have articulated it and drawn it up beautifully. The aim of your art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but your inward significance. All of these things are what are derived internally. And then how those things are derived internally, I get to express them outwardly. It's about training, man. That's what fitness is to me. That is the health and wellness idea. It's about who you are becoming. And each time I prescribe myself new exercise, it's a way to role play who it is I want to be that day. And for me, it's the hero, it's the conqueror, it's the guy who says onwards. Nietzsche, who's the founder of psychology, he said psychology is once more the path to fundamental problems. The coolest thing about how I said your life, or us, our first kind of input is sensory, like touch. We get super easy access with fitness and training. We can easily get access to that psychology and immediately take lessons that we're learning and little habitual habits and decision making and take some stimuli, have the space, and then create our responses to said stimuli. So every time I train, it's me. That's who I am. I work hard. I want to be the person who says, I want to work hard. I also want to be the man who's smart enough that when things do get maybe perhaps too hard or I'm not feeling well, that I have the autonomy to say, I'm going to live another day. I'm going to make a better decision for myself. Now, is that me complacently saying, I just don't feel well, like, I'm achy and tired, or like, because I'm so in tune with who I am and this picture that I've created, am I so in tune with it that I know the difference? And that is something that's really hard for people. Yeah. So for me, it's voluntary hardship with purpose in mind, always. Mr. Frankl also wrote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. If you are able to change your situation, I have given you the blueprint, at least one of them. And if you can't change your situation, you could perhaps just change yourself. Onwards. See you guys next week.